Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the states of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Moment of reflection. Please remain standing for our servicemen and women throughout the world, and also for those who have passed away in our community. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Perry? Mr. Donahue?
Here.
Attorney Dempsey?
Here.
Mr. Gorham?
Here.
Mr. Rogan?
I would like to make a motion to appoint Councilman Gallen as temporary chair for the Committee on Rules.
Second.
On the question, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it and so moved. Mrs. Reed, please dispense with the reading of the minutes.
Third order, 3A, minutes of the Civil Service Commission meeting held December 5, 2019. 3B, correspondence received from the city's business administrator in response to council's request regarding alternative budget analysis. 3C, correspondence received from the city's business administrator in response to council's questions regarding the 2020 operating budget. 3D, check received from Covenant Presbyterian Church in the amount of $1,000, which is payment in lieu of taxes.
Are there any comments on any of the third order items? If not, received and filed. Do any council members have any announcements at this time?
No.
I have two. This evening's meeting is expected to be the last regular meeting of council for 2019. The meetings for December 23rd and 30th will be canceled. The next meeting of council will be held on the first Monday in January at 10 a.m., and the reorganization meeting will follow at 11 a.m. Council will meet in caucus tomorrow evening, December 17th at 6:30 p.m. in the city clerk's office for the purpose of discussing reorganization for 2020. This will be a public caucus. Everybody's invited to attend. An executive session will be held to discuss personnel matters as well tomorrow. Mrs. Reed?
Fourth order, citizens' participation.
The first speaker for tonight's meeting is John Bravo.
Hi, I'm back. Houdini Museum, I'm one of the partners.
Sir, could you please state your name for the record?
Excuse me?
Could you please state your name for the record?
I'm sorry, I thought I did. John Bravo.
Thank you.
Houdini Museum. We still have a roof that leaks. When it rains outside, it rains inside. One of the city's biggest problems is buildings not being kept up. Much of this was helped with the passage during Cartwright's time in office, which began in 2014, which added another level of difficulty or impossibility for property owners who wanted to get a permit to work on their property. Much of this was helped with the passage of the well-meaning ordinance in 2016, number 63, 2016, passed during Cartwright's time in office, which began in 2014. This added another level of impossibility for property owners who wanted to get a permit to do work on their property. What is common in most cities around the country, and was common before that ordinance, if you owned a property, if your roof leaked, you could go get a permit instantly to repair that leak. Now you have to go through a commercial contractor who then will hire someone. It added another level, and I think it was probably promoted by Cartwright himself in order to do his illegal schemes, which he is either in jail or may be in jail. He pleaded guilty. Is there any chance of considering to rescind that 2016 ordinance or to amend it?
At this point, that would have to be something that we would discuss next year.
Okay. Does that mean we should come tomorrow to the meeting, the caucus?
January, I'm sorry. That would be something that we would discuss in January.
Okay. With the freedom of information, am I allowed to get a list of the roofers that were hired or the contractors that were hired under this new ordinance for the last year so I can try to find someone that will do the roof? No one wants to work in Scranton. No contractor wants to work in Scranton. They consider the city too difficult and corrupt. I'm sorry to say that here, but that is a fact, and I'm sure you've gotten other similar complaints. You hired Barry Islet Associates to look into the city's problems. Is it possible to get information for the person to contact there to give them some of our input?
I don't know that that would be proper because they're contracted with the city. You certainly could give council any request you have. And one of the things that we're going to do tonight is ask that Barry Islet, the company, come in and give council updates as they work their way through the office.
Okay. Let me see if there was anything else I wanted to ask. That's about it, but it's very important that if a person owns a piece of property and the roof is leaking, that they can get a permit to fix that property. It is not now possible, and if you go through Scranton, many, many buildings are small little buildings, mom and pop operations, and when they're not going to be able, with this ordinance that was passed in 2016, to get their roofs fixed. So you are slowly, with your law, demolishing our poor little city. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Dorothy Dietrich. And if you could just please state your name for the record.
My name is Dorothy Dietrich, and it's in response to the Houdini Museum, and it's pretty much the same. I wasn't even sure if I should come here today because I'm just very frustrated, and it seems like it doesn't make any difference if I'm here or not. I was at McDonald's the other day, and there was like 12 guys that were all construction people with their construction shirts, and I said, wow, you guys do construction. Do you know if there's anybody that can do roofing in Scranton? And the one guy said, you kidding me? Scranton? Nobody wants to work in Scranton. And I said, why? They said, because you can't work with Scranton. You can't get permits. They're on top of you all the time. You can't do your work. Even if you're professional, you can't do it. They don't want to be professional in Scranton. So I don't know. I guess my next thing is to look for rubber tarps, and we'll climb on the roof and try to cover it up till spring. I don't know what to do. We can't. The one guy that we did have that agreed to do it, he came to get a permit, found out his city license had expired, so he renewed that, and then came back to get his permit, and they said, no, that's the wrong license. You need to have a commercial contractor's license. So he's like, okay, what do I do for that? We have to take a test. So now we can't even get him to communicate with us. I think he's frustrated, and that's the only guy that we ever had that said that he would like to fix it. He said, you guys need help. I'd like to be the one to do it. And so, I don't know. Now I'm looking for anything. I don't know what to do. The winter's coming. It can't be good to have a leaky roof in the winter. So thanks. I don't know what to do.
We did receive a response from the Licensing and Inspections Department, and I know this doesn't really help you, but what they had said to us was because the property is a commercial business, the general contractor must pull the permit. General contractor must pull the permit. That's the information that they gave us.
Yeah, they said a commercial contractor. He had a general license, but they said that he needed a commercial contractor's license. And I don't know what it is that he had to go through, but apparently he wasn't able to get through to get that. And so now we just don't have anybody. Everybody we call, they ask if it's a roof job, and I say, no, it's a repair job, and nobody wants to deal with a tiny job like that. But in the meantime, it's a big deal because it's leaking. So I don't know what to do.
Was your insurance company able to make any recommendations to you relative to a contractor?
No. Nope. So there we go. Just thought I'd let you know. It's not, I don't know what to do. And
It's all because of the 2016.
if that somehow there could be an emergency meeting and get that thing fixed, because we all know what the problem is.
Yeah, that's very unlikely, because even if we did have an emergency meeting, it would still have to, it's an ordinance, so if we were to change it, it would have to go 3 weeks anyway. So again, as I told your husband, that's something that we will have to consider next year in January.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks.
Thank you. Next speaker is Joan Hodowanitz.
Joan Hodowanitz, city resident and taxpayer. Rumor has it that the city lost the Act 511 lawsuit. So I would ask you in fifth order to comment on this and what it means for the city. Is it going to impact the 2020 budget? In fact, has the mayor signed the budget yet? Does he intend to sign it? Is there going to have to be an escrow account set up? What does this mean to the city? And am I going to get a refund for my overpayment of taxes over the last few years? Or are you just going to have to pay that out of my other hand? So please discuss in fifth order what the loss of the Act 511 lawsuit means. I am assuming that the city is going to appeal the decision, but still, something's going to have to be done. I sat through the caucus with the auditors, couldn't hear very much, maybe one word out of 3, because your acoustics are not very good and you weren't using microphones. But this is what I thought I heard. A lot of the problems with the lateness of the audit were due to Rainey and Rainey, not providing accurate information, errors in their trial balances, so on and so forth. I still don't understand why we even hire Rainey and Rainey when it is the duty and job descriptions of the business administrator's office to prepare for audits. I could understand 1 year having them as you transition between administrations and you lose personnel and you lose that expertise. But they've been there, what, 4 or 5 years? And who's the quality control on their performance? I don't know. I also thought I heard that they weren't really hired until May 14th. I don't know why we hired them so late. We should be hiring them now for them to start work on January 1st. And I don't understand why you would go any other way. I also thought I heard that they did not provide any progress reports to the mayor, the city controller, or city council, even though their contract required them to do so. I don't know why you weren't jumping up and down all over them. I mean, week after week, I would ask, where's the audit? And you would all tell me, oh, it's coming, you know, September 30th, December 1st, you know, whatever date you wanted to give me. Nobody, I don't understand why as soon as they were hitting roadblocks with Rainey and Rainey, they didn't say something, and it didn't get up to this level. That's got to change. I thought I heard something about something in the 2017 audit having to be restated, if you would explain that in fifth order. And the lady said something about how impressed she was during the summer at the way the city's departments functioned. Nobody asked her about lips. That thing is broken, and we know it's broken. So I couldn't hear very much. I did hear an allusion to the possible loss of federal funds. Would you please expand on that in fifth order? Also, I'm wondering if anybody read the guest editorial that Patrick Friccione had in the paper the other day on the payroll tax and the impact on manufacturers operating within the city. What's the impact going to be on the payroll tax on those manufacturers? I don't know. I was surprised to see that thing come out so late after the election where the question was on the ballot. But need a clear vision of here what's happening to the 2020 budget. What can we expect with the loss of the Act 511 lawsuit? By the way, audit after audit, there was no comment on the potential loss of lawsuits. It's been a cut and paste year after year. And I want to see what they're going to say. Well, not what they're going to say, what the administration is going to say. I think it's either paragraph 13 or 17 under MDA, what they're going to say about the potential loss of that lawsuit, and see if they're going to cut and paste again 3 years in a row. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Les Spindler.
Good evening, Council. Les Spindler, city resident, homeowner, taxpayer. Saturday in the mail, I received a certified letter from our wonderful lips department saying that I owe fees for 2017 and 2018. I live at the property. I'm exempt. I've come to council ever since this stupid ordinance was put into effect saying it's illegal. I live there. I don't have to pay it. I brought it to Pat Rogan once. He says, give Kathy the form, we'll take care of it. It was never taken care of. So now I'm being threatened, saying I could be taken to court, be fined from $100 to $500. I can't rent it until I get an inspector in there. I own the house. It's paid off. I own it. I have the deed. They can't tell me who to rent it or what. I can't rent it. Who the hell do they think they are? They're incompetent, and I blame you, Councilman Gahn, and everybody else that was on council, plus our illustrious mayor was on council at the time, passing this legislation, because it was terribly written. People that are exempt shouldn't have to fill out a stupid form. As I said before, it's time consuming for them, it's time consuming for the department to ship them out and to mail them. It uses postage. And just like that poor woman on Harrison Avenue that can't get permits because she didn't fill hers out, and she's a leaky roof like these people over here. It's ridiculous how this city runs anymore. No wonder nobody wants to live here anymore. When I was a kid, there's 100,000 people in this city, and now it's dwindling and dwindling, and you wonder why? They make it difficult for people who want to live here. And I couldn't make it to Lips today, but I will be there tomorrow. And I guarantee you they're not going to be happy to see me. We might need the police officer to drag me out of there tomorrow, because I'm going to give them a big piece of my mind. I don't know what more has to be done, but it's ridiculous. I've lived there for 30 years, and they're saying that I have an illegal rental unit. It's just incompetence in the city from the top to the bottom. And you people aren't excused either. Another thing. You passed a budget last week. Did any of you look into the problem that I brought up 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago about the fee being illegal, being put in with the property taxes?
No, because that's not, technically that conversion of the refuse bill into the real estate tax bill is not part of the 2020 budget. It will get legislation on that in January.
Oh, that's not in this year's budget?
No, if you look at the budget, and we were all a little confused by it, I don't want to take up too much of your time, but if you look at the line item for refuse, it's still at $300. So we would need to vote on that, enabling the fee to go from $300 to $250, and then that would kick in the conversion of the refuse bill into the real estate tax bill.
Oh,
We have a lot of questions on that.
So it's going to be status quo for this year?
Unless next year the council decides to lower the fee from $300 to $250. But again, as I stated the last few weeks, I have a lot of concerns about the way that they're proposing it.
Okay, well, I guess that's all I have. But I think that should definitely be looked into, because I said, this isn't from me. This is from a CPA saying that it's illegal. And I can see that. There's nowhere to put a fee on an income tax form. So I'm not a CPA, but it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that out. You can't claim a fee on your income taxes. So, all right, I want to wish everybody happy holidays, and we'll see you next year.
Thank you. Next speaker is Bob Bolus.
Good evening, Council. Bob Bolus, Scranton. There's several issues we have here with the University of Scranton. Turning Point, a conservative group, made an application to join the university, and they were denied. Yet, Jessica Rothschild, who was a founding member and student president of their gay organization, that was accepted and utilized at the University of Scranton. And their mission statement from the U is Scranton is inclusion to build a stronger community by creating a more welcoming and comfortable environment for gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, and questioning students within the university. Even though they sit there and say they're a Catholic teaching and Jesuit university. Well, to turn that around, to accept that group and turn down Turning Point, I believe unquestionably, the University of Scranton has violated their principles of who they are and what they stand for. To deny this group based on that and allow a homosexual group to be in there is a violation of the rule of God that sex is between a man and a woman. While they may be a Catholic private university, they receive state and federal money and cannot do what they're doing. It's my intent to see that their tax-exempt status is now revoked because they're under that as a Catholic university and teaching. They have violated that rule. They should no longer be entitled to their exemption and start paying the millions of dollars to the city that they've been bullying us out because they're a bully with money. And that's where I stand on that. And as far as sexual orientation goes, I know it was raised, I wasn't here, by Attorney Dempsey and yourself. Well, I didn't bring it up, Jessica Rothschild did, and that was part of her campaign. She's a public figure, and sexual orientation can be discussed by anybody. It's an open subject. So to be chastised that I said that I could be sued, I welcome any attorney to take me to court. I love it. You know, she was the president and student member, president of the Scranton Inclusion. It was posted on Equity PA Facebook page on February 8, 2011. So there's no secret what went on. The other part I have, and I want to try and move it as quick. I have a dinner, this will be the 26th year I'm doing it. It's in honor of Roseanne Novembrino. We're dedicating this dinner to her. It's at St. Pat's Church. It's the Bob Bolus Senior Christmas dinner. It's all day long. They could call my office for a ride, a takeout, or whatever they need to get there. And that's to the people here, and that's to honor Roseanne and all those that have helped me over the last 26 years with the dinner. The issue I have is, and boy, I'm really glad he's here tonight. Mr. Hinton, I wasn't around last week when Mr. Hinton came in and blew his bugle about his credibility. Well, I've been in legal litigation over containers, which you guys approved, cannot come into the city of Scranton unless they get a zoning permit or go through planning, because they're not considered structures, thanks to Mr. Hinton going to court. Let me finish.
Mr. Bolus, just please address council. Do not address members of the audience. Thank you.
Well, we're going to address one way or the other, okay? So anyway, you approved to put containers in the city under a regulation. You can't do that. They're considered structures now. We're grandfathered in. And Hinton and I went to court, and I heard Hinton, and I'm going to call him a liar right to his face, about the pay to play in the city of Scranton. I was told at a hearing that I should learn to play the game. Once in a while, you have to. I told him I don't play games. He said, his comments were, that's why you're going to lose. I said, you mean if I don't pay someone? He said, you got the message. I spoke to Courtright about it. He said, I have to go see and deal with Hinton direct. I said, Billy, I'm not paying you, and I'm sure in the hell not handing Hinton any money. We're in court. And Mr. Hinton,
Mr. Bolus, excuse me, Mr. Bolus.
You just listen to us once in a while.
Mr. Bolus,
No,
you are not
you're going to
addressing-
listen because you
you are
created
not
a problem
addressing members of
with
the audience.
Naog Park by passing a tax.
Mr. Bolus.
Go ahead. Don't bang your stupid damn
Mr.
hammer. We'll pay
Bolus,
you.
excuse me. Please sit down. Thank you.
No, I want to
Your time
finish.
is up.
I want to.
Your
I'm
time is
finishing
up.
my statement.
I'm going to ask you one more time before I
Don't,
recess the
don't be a
meeting.
dictator, because
Mr.
when you run
Bolus,
for president,
I'd like to take a
there's
five-minute recess, please.
$500,000
I'd like to
that
make a
should be
motion
going
to
to
take a five-minute
Naog
recess.
Park,
Second.
and you
On
should
the
be
question,
there.
all those in favor?
Yeah, adjourn
Aye.
again. You've been nothing but a coward ever since we.
Before I call the next speaker up, I just want to say, we do have rules of council that I have in my hand here. I'd like to follow them, please. You have 5 minutes to speak. All I'm asking is that you keep to city business and please address the council and not members of the audience. Thank you. The next speaker is Charlene Stankiewicz, and I hope I got your name right. And just
Okay.
please state your name for the record.
My name is Charlene Stankiewicz.
And Robert Stankiewicz.
We're both taxpayers. The reason I'm here is I live at 322 3rd Avenue in Scranton, right where the ballpark, the University of Scranton is, the bottom half. And what's happening is the huge dump trucks are going up and down the street there. And that whole area was flushed. And when we bought the home, we were married 47 years. We rented for 7 years, and 40 years we're living in the house. And that whole area was flushed with the mines. And they're going up Luzerne Street, part of Luzerne Street, and when you make the right-hand turn on 4th Avenue there's a home there that has mine subsidence underneath. There's a shaft, okay? And I worked 31 years for supermarket services, and what happened is I was a shipping clerk, so I know the weight, the tons, everything. And there is a weight limit, and they're well over. And there's two or three places where the road is partially coming down, sagging. And there's gonna be problems.
Let me jump in.
Okay, now here's my husband.
Sure.
Excuse me. Like she said, there's trucks coming down. The trucks coming down empty are 15 ton, at least. If they have and I'll load them back. And they come down empty, then they come down loaded, because they use the one bridge to go up empty, which is deplorable, which we know. And the other one right there by the university, that does have a weight limit, but they took it off. How they could just, I don't know, your engineer or whoever you have comes up with these ideas, I have no idea. But we flushed for 3 years there, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And we know we have mines. that Mr. White, when he went down there, remember when Mr. White went in? Well, I was there at the hall when they called the reserves in, and it like went to China. And I don't need it happening here. I mean, they got a weight limit. And in the wintertime, I hope they don't do it all year long. I know they're hauling salt, because all you have to do is follow the trail from the trucks.
So, I don't want to interrupt you. Do you have anything else that you'd like to add? Because I do have a response for you.
Yeah, I know. I've been saying, because there was signs there. Now they're missing. I don't think it was vandalism. I'm pretty sure it was the engineer that gave them the okay to go down the street.
Yeah.
And not only that, not only dump trucks. I noticed early in the morning they had tractor trailers, the ones with the dump.
Right.
I can't even imagine. They're well over 100 ton loaded.
So,
So either if we can't get some kind of results from used people, right?
Right.
Which, like my wife said, we're taxpayers, you know? Do we call in now engineers from the mine subsidence?
well, first of all, I want to thank you and your wife for coming down. I have been in contact over the last few days with one of your neighbors, Mr.
Danny Sanacero, but his wife is ill. That's
yeah,
where he's with her right
in fact, he called me this morning, but I couldn't get back to him in time before the meeting. But I had been talking to him over the last few days, and I also talked to Andy Chomko, who is a neighbor there and has a business. So I have been in contact with the city engineer. We talked briefly about this in the caucus, so I've been going back and forth with him. In fact, I just talked to him this afternoon before I came to the meeting.
Yeah.
So we are going to ask our city clerk tonight to put something in writing detailing the whole issue. I will include the pictures. Mr. Chomko sent me the pictures of the sidewalk, the sidewalks that were all broken up.
Could I add one thing?
Sure.
Besides the trucks, that's the best thing they ever did to university, putting that parking.
Right.
But when you come home from work and you can't park, and you put 2 vehicles parked on each side, you figure it out, do the math. There's no way you're going to get two-way traffic.
Well,
The gentleman, he was down there. I don't know if he patrols or what he does, but on 3rd Avenue, there's traffic when they have ball games and that.
right. So what we're going to do, Mr.
You
St.
got to get permit parking or something, or?
Yeah, so what we're going to do in terms of the issue with the trucks is we're going to put something in writing to the city engineer, asking him to go through. I asked Mrs. Reed in the caucus tonight to go through and look for anything related to legislation with 3rd Avenue and weight limits and all that. So we're going to put everything in writing. We're going to send it to Mr. Pocius, and then if you want to leave your number, or I can use Mr. Sanacero as a contact, I'm sure you.
He's
so
just right
he's
down the road.
the leader in down there. So I will get in touch with him, and we'll keep the communication open. But we are looking into this issue, and we will get back to you as soon
I
as
understand you
we
got
get something.
bridges that need repairs and that, you know. But
Right.
we're in
Okay.
a situation ourselves.
Oh, I understand. But we will be in touch, and I thank you for coming down here.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks. Have a
Thank
good
you.
night. The next speaker, hard to see what the name is. Tom Connor? Sorry if I mispronounce your name. And if you could state your name for the record, just in case I got it wrong. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Tom Coyne.
Coyne, I'm sorry.
Yes, but from back in Manuka section. I'm back in the city after 15 years of being out of it. I was born and raised back in Manuka, and spent many years as a wee tyke in political polling places, handing out all sorts of political documents and learning somewhat of the system. In coming back here and reviewing the notes for council meeting, I noticed in the documents there was a notice on the trash fee of how much was physically collected and how much was due from the 2017 years and in prior years. I think it was in a December 1st document that was given back to your board that's online. In looking at that, I have still yet to see what the physical cost of picking up trash, because as I understand it, and like I said, I'm trying to get up to speed, the trash collections itself was not supposed to be a capital gains going into general funds. It was supposed to be whatever the amount of money that was for trash collections was exclusively what the fee was to be put onto the city. It was not meant to be an alternate cash cow. It was meant to be 100% of what trash collections were would be the fee that would be charged to citizens. And I understand that's in court. I've yet to see at this point how much it actually costs for the department to collect for years. And we have one side of the equation, but I haven't seen documents on the other. Second thing I would like, and excuse me for a second, thank you, lady and gentlemen of council, for hearing me. I want to take a moment out to say that. Your IT, I've looked at it and you have a total of 3 people on your IT department. I'm concerned and I'm not aware of how hardened Scranton is and their IT environment towards, I came from Philadelphia and Baltimore. Baltimore got hit with a crypto attack, which knocked out not only the water company down there, the water bill since it was city, but all the records and even laptops associated with it. And there was not any real disaster recovery plan or isolation to restore services back to the point of they were down for months and months. Does the city of Scranton have any plan in place that has not only hardened their infrastructure, but the ability to revert back in case of a catastrophic crash that has actually been tested? Because part of a disaster recovery plan is not just waiting for it to happen and saying, let's try and see if this will work, going through documenting and saying this will work. I'm just curious because there's very little talk in what I've researched on the IT infrastructure, and it's the neural network of your government system, from taxes to garbage collections to finances to records that the federal government is trying to indict on. All of that can be lost in 5 minutes through a computer connected to the network that's unsecured. It's as quick as an electronic moves across, and I'm not sure if it's been addressed at this point, and I'd be happy if someone would entertain at least finding out if there is a plan in place. Thank you.
Sir, real quick, is that something a proper backup would prevent or not?
A proper backup will not prevent it because you would have to actually mirror systems rather than, because what happens is when a crypto lock type thing comes in, not only does it get the data, but it actually encrypts the BIOS of the system itself, okay, which means you can't restore it on because the BIOS itself is locked. You would have to reflash all the machines and then try to get the data back from it. A lot of times what's done is it's called live imaging, where they take the equivalent of a snapshot of it, which means, and there are systems out there that are specifically meant for recovery from those. It's basically turning on a light. It does not allow you to write back. So there are ways to protect against it, but it's not as simple as just a backup.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Have a good night. The next speaker is Lee Morgan.
Good evening, Council. The first thing I have here tonight is that I think it's pretty important for all the residents to understand that the next mayor is going to have to reopen the budget, because it's my opinion there have to be major cuts made to that budget. And probably, you know what, I'd have to say maybe 10 years ago, I requested the council cut the budget by 30%. That wasn't a pipe dream. I think that even a forensic audit would show where the city actually is, but I think the people in the city are under a misconception. You know, we've formed an ethics board but there's no ethics in politics. So I don't know what the residents of the city would expect from an ethical point of view. I think it's just more silliness that the residents have just put themselves in line for. You know, the article in the Scranton Times about the payroll tax. The residents in this city have been overtaxed for so long that it's destroyed the city. And the people we elect, I blame that on the residents, because the people we elect don't have an ability to lead. A city and a community doesn't go through distress for 3 decades. And reaching into that threshold to become distressed over decades of mismanagement and the spending that had to take place. You know, you've got people who come here, and you know, I appreciate the people from the Houdini Museum who came here and spoke tonight, but their solutions to their problems are not in this council chamber. They're in a courtroom. They've got to file something in court. The court will take care of it all. A lot of the problems this city's experiencing are not going to be solved here. Because if you can't get over a problem in a city after 30 years, the answers aren't here. They're never going to be here. You know, Mr. Bolus was talking about the young lady that just got elected to be the mayor. Look, I really don't know what her qualifications are, but when he talks about a conservative group that can't form a group at the University of Scranton, they belong in a courtroom. All these things are not going to be solved here. And when I have a problem with the city, I don't come here. I pick up a law book and I go into a courtroom. I don't care what laws the city passes because it really doesn't mean anything to me. Nothing at all. Anything I do, I don't consider anything that this council passes in law. Doesn't matter to me. I care what the state says, and I care what the federal government says. And then I follow myself from there. I think that, to be honest with you, the real answers for this city, all the authorities have to go. Somebody should have challenged the sale of the Scranton Sewer Authority. But then again, that goes back to the PUC, and those judges are just beyond corrupt because they're all owned by the utilities. They've let terrible things happen to our country. I'm amazed that the Constitution and the Bill of Rights haven't just completely fallen to the ground because the people don't have any understanding of them. Last week, somebody came here and they spoke about public education in Scranton. Well, if you picked up the Scranton Times newspaper to tell you where the City of Scranton School District is in ranking in the area, it's terrible. I mean, if the residents want to change this city, they've got to wake up. They've got to change the way all business is conducted here. And the new mayor who was just elected has basically said that she's up to that task. So I'd say, let's try to interact with her and let's present her with our demands, because that's what's required to be a good American. To be able to interact with your government, whether they like it or not, and make changes for the benefit of the residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Pat Hinton.
Good evening, Council. Pat Hinton, Scranton. Before I talk about the licensing department, I mean, I didn't want to stoop this low, but after hearing Mr. Bolus's comment, unfortunately I have to respond. the ridiculous comments, I should say. So basically what Mr. Bowles just set up here right in front of council right now is a completely fabricated story. I have no idea where he got that from. The only thing that I could think of that is Mr. Bowles is bitter because he had junk trailers on his property in Southside on East Mountain for years, refused to move them until I got there, that I got an approved court order to make him move them. So that's the only reason why I could think he came up with that outlandish statement. But moving on. And again, the licensing department, many people, tonight we're talking about it. The licensing department is not so much broken, okay? It just didn't get the attention that it needed for years and years. And I think people have a misconception of what actually goes on in the licensing and inspections department. There's a lot of accomplishments that happened in the licensing and inspections department over the years, significant accomplishments. Just to give you, I wish I could give a lot of specifics, but we're on a time constraint. But I can name a couple. In 2014, the rental registration program, from 2001 to 2013, they had less than 3,000 rental units on the books. From 2014 till about 2018, that number increased to almost 10,000 in 4 years compared to 12 years previously. I think that's a very big accomplishment. Another big accomplishment that people don't understand is that the LIPS department from 2014 to 16 completely went over an underhaul. The department was remodeled, software was upgraded, inspectors that were never certified before were made to get certified. And even after remodeling that department and upgrading everything, the licensing department has a special city account there that it's used to use that money to go back into the department. In 2014, there was approximately $15,000 in that account. After the department was totally rehauled and upgraded, that account had more than $125,000 in it after everything was done. And that's only because the department was functioning efficiently. Now that was only happening until about late 2016, where a lot of things started to change. And they changed for a few reasons, actually 2 reasons. Number one, I was doing my job, I was upholding the law no matter who the person was, who the contractor was, whether they were politically connected, whether they were more affluent, I didn't care. Whatever the law said, my job was to enforce the law. Well, that didn't sit well with a lot of people, and I think that's where a lot of these complaints came from. And I could tell you, I could probably name probably about a dozen people who continually made these complaints unjustifiably. And it was just because they were made to follow the law, and they didn't like that. And as a result of that, I got a lot of pressure put on me, a lot of heat put on me because of that issue. I was making changes. And again, I can give you some specifics. Between the Business Administration Office, the Law Department, and HR Office, the BA Office completely stopped accepting any purchases I want. I couldn't even buy a box of pens if I wanted to. That's how much pressure they were putting on me just because I was doing my job, period. The Law Department stopped processing any legislation I brought to them. The HR Department wouldn't let me discipline anyone, even though if an employee was insubordinate, I couldn't discipline anyone. Charges were just basically dropped without my knowledge or approval. So these things were all taking place just because I was trying to do my job. And unfortunately, I think Mr. Evans took that same approach with me. That is, when he got there, he saw me as a roadblock of something that he wanted to accomplish. Now, I find it extremely ironic, and I'm a little concerned that his main focus for changes was the licensing department. That was his first thing about amending the quality of life ordinance, which I think was a big mistake. I don't see how you remove violations and reduce violations by 75% and say that's going to be this is going to be a tougher fight on blight. Actually, myself and Wayne Evans wrote that legislation back in 2015, so I don't know why the change. And I know Mr. Evans and Mr. Bolzoni were the 2 main people behind the assessment of the licensing department, which I think is a waste of money. The licensing department needs 3 things. It needs to have the administration, like the mayor's office, law office, and BA office, to keep its nose out of that department for a conflict of interest. It needs funding and it needs staff. That's what it needs. And it needs the appropriate people to be certified. If Mr. Evans was so concerned about this assessment, he should look to his own business, because he doesn't have the proper paperwork. When he remodeled a single-family home into a multi-use commercial business, he never had commercial prints. He never had a certificate of occupancy. So I think it's kind of ironic that he wants to focus that on the licensing office. So, unfortunately, I wish I could say more, but thanks for listening tonight. And then finally, just Mr. Donahue, I know you responded to my question last week, and you did admit to saying about I was involved in criminal activity. I would just say that if you could specifically cite which crimes that I committed and specifically show me the evidence that you had to prove that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is David Dobson.
Good evening, Council. Dave Dobson, resident, taxpayer. Opening's still over there for a counselor. I don't know if your law office will allow you to do that or not. This year, the Social Security Administration is paying a 1.6% increase to retirees. And we have a large population of retirees because back in the late 80s and 90s, Scranton was sold to retirees as a great place to retire to. And now on our taxes, I don't want to bash you about the increase, but it's constantly going on, and at the behest of Pell. It seems like Pell didn't exactly love a tax increase. I know it has to be done, but we are 36% tax exempt, and I have over the years, several years, probably 3 administrations of mayor now, to bring up entertain the idea that if the state constitution wants to require us to constantly take in a tax exempt, and I'm not talking about the little church in the valley by the Wildwoods, although I have said that they could always feel free to pay taxes if they want to engage in politics. But it's state buildings, it's federal buildings, it's this, it's that, and whatever. And the point being that they should, after a certain point, replace this money. I have to get a letter out to an email to the person with the school board. I think his last name is Williams, and I'd like to reestablish the Taxpayers organization strictly for Scranton. No Greater Lackawanna taxpayers. No. We need to handle the problems we have here. And if you're a retiree and you put 4 kids through school, personally, I don't want to hear complaints about the school taxes, because you were given a loan, basically. It costs $40,000 to $60,000 a year to put 4 kids through school. So, excuse me, just because you're 65 or 66 years old and your kids are all grown up, well, the next guy would have to pay tuition if that be the point. And I mean, I'd never heard of Pell coming up with an idea of what to do with this ever-growing tax-exempt problem in the city. And I mean, it's a lot of things. Like the county, a couple of years ago, we tore down a perfectly nice baseball stadium and erected a new one, and they raised our taxes 38%. You know, so it's not only Scranton, Pennsylvania, it's everybody. And I was down that baseball station, and other than abandoning the top floor and moving the good bleachers down to the bottom, it would have been great. I showed up there one morning, and by the time me and Marie got frisked, the meeting was over. You know, we barely got through to security, and the meeting's over, go home. You know, It's just a shame. And as far as trash is concerned, once again, I have to talk on that every week. No changes, just keep it the way it is and start collecting as per ordinance. Levy the liens, and it would be interesting to see an accounting. I have also mentioned that, an accounting of what it really costs for them to show up at my front door, and then after that is the hauling fees, but or tipping fees. But thank you and have a good night.
Thank you. Have a good night. There's no other speakers who signed in. Would anyone else from the public who's here tonight like to address council?
Marie Schumacher. Before I start, with the bell, is it still a 30-second warning? Okay, thank you. First I need to find my I had a call from Faye Franis, who wanted me to share with you that she had an issue at her property with a barn was collapsing, and because of the heavy truck traffic, she's down in that same area, and she was behind getting that 1995 legislation, and she said she has the copy of the ordinance, so she'll get you the number tomorrow, so you can do it. And she said it's all of Bellevue. It goes all the way up to Meridian that is under the weight restriction. So she was certainly anxious for that. Now to mine. Before I get to mine, Mr. Donahue, you had mentioned when I asked if there was money in the budget for completing the Meadowbrook effort on the 1700 block of Wyoming Avenue, you said you were trying to get permission for like money from another fund.
So there's already $1 million in a fund that's supposed to be used as the match for the eventual fix. So we're trying to get approval from DEP to pull that money out and then replace it so that we have that money then still there for once that eventual fix actually happens.
Oh.
And that's still 5 to 6 years down the road.
There's been no
I
action.
mean, I haven't heard anything back from the administration on, what they have heard from DEP yet.
Okay, if you could see if they were the last time they checked, that would be helpful. Thank you. Now, something that bothers me personally, because this whole thing with the parking, on-street parking, is it's my understanding that the handicap spaces have gone away. And I don't know, now I see blue, and I don't know if I should park there or if I shouldn't. And I mean, I don't want to get a ticket, and I don't want to take a space away from a handicapped person. I had that for 5 years, and I don't want to, I wouldn't want to deprive anybody. But now that we have these kiosks, when are they, is it just where there used to be blue parking spaces, where there's kiosks that you just park any place, but other places you have to not park? Because for instance, they made kiosk parking only in front of the county building, the old Globe store, and now you have to pay, but they are negotiating. They have one space negotiated for, I believe it was handicapped vets, and they're trying to coordinate for 2 more. But how do you know?
I thought there were still blue lines. Am I mistaken? Down by my office, I thought I saw blue lines.
New blue lines or old blue lines? Yeah, see, that's it. The blue lines are there, and so you don't know. Now, on the on-street, my understanding is that handicap can park any place they can find a spot.
No, we'll clarify that with ABM. In fact, I think we're supposed to have them in, but then meetings got canceled with the weather. I think we'll have them in sometime in January. We can clarify that.
Glad you said that, canceled. Now, what is the deal tomorrow night? If we do get a storm and this building is closed again, are you still meeting tomorrow night?
So if the building is open, we will meet. If it is closed, we will reschedule
Well, but
that
it was
caucus.
closed a couple weeks ago when we had that storm, and it was open specially, so how
Well, that
does
wasn't-
the general public
That
know?
wasn't my call, but I'm saying.
No,
if-
I'm not saying it was.
No, I know that, but
I'm
I'm-
just saying it was said it was closed to the general, to the public.
Well, moving forward, if we ever have a weather.
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow, and moving forward after that, if the building is closed, we will not meet. We will reschedule the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Okay, when are the tax bills going out, property tax bills?
I don't know the exact date. I think sometime in February is when they usually go out.
So you're saying that this trash, what's going to happen with the trash is going to be determined before then?
I don't think it can be, that's one of the issues that I brought up. I don't think it can be done. I don't think it's realistic.
And what about, when do we know about the payroll tax as opposed to the?
That
I mean,
won't-
I know what's in the budget, but can that be done this year then,
Councilman
really?
Dodd.
And if it can't,
That won't be done until July 1st. If we go that route, it wouldn't be done until July 1st, so it would be done for half the year.
We have to
okay.
file a petition with the court to get approval to do
Yes.
that, and we have not filed that just yet, but I believe there was talks about getting that filed in the near future for, like Kyle said, the
It should be-
July
it should-
date.
Yeah, it should have been filed. It should be, if it hasn't been filed at the end of last week, it should be filed this week, I believe that was, and hopefully we get more information on that tomorrow. We're supposed to have a meeting tomorrow, but that might get canceled too with the weather, but it wouldn't be implemented until July 1st. So,
in any case,
so at that point, we would repeal, the business privilege and mercantile taxing legislation and then implement payroll
okay,
prep.
has the school board approved it?
No.
I know.
Well, no, so that's,
Oh, okay.
that will be,
was the-
but that won't happen until
Yeah,
at least mid-year.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else from the public that is here tonight that would like to address council?
Fifth order, 5A motions.
Councilman Donahue, do you have any motions or comments?
My only comment would be in response to Joan about the 511. Until I haven't seen a copy of any decision yet, so until I'm able to review that, I wouldn't be able to give any comment to you on that. And that's all I have for tonight.
Thank you, Councilman Donahue. Attorney Dempsey, do you have any motions or comments?
I do, thank you. Good night, everyone, and thank you for coming. I as well received a letter from the Department of Licensing.
Mike.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming. I as well received a letter from the Department of Licensing and Inspection, so I went to do a little investigating today. And it was interesting to me because my letter is dated December 2nd, and I received it Saturday via certified mail, so I received it on December 12th. And it gave me 15 days from the date of the letter, not the date of receipt, to take action, which would be tomorrow, which is difficult for anyone under any circumstances, but luckily I work in a law office. And I read the body of the letter at least 2 to 3 times because, quite frankly, from my perspective, and I send out letters pretty regularly like this, it is an intimidating letter to anyone who receives it. And the letter specifically stated that according to city records, my above property was listed as a rental unit. I as well have lived in this home for 25 years since the date I purchased it with my family. So I was seeking clarification on that statement because they said according to city records, and I was thinking, what records do they have to prove this? Because this is an untrue statement. So I did make some calls today. I did call over to Mr. Oleski, who I did not personally hear back from. He did get back to Lori, and there was a little bit of a communication delivered to me on that they were going by a tax record from Lackawanna County, which I live on a corner lot, and it does specifically say it's a residential single dwelling. But then I thought, I'll call over to the number that was given to me and just say my regular name. I didn't say what I was or what I did. And the message I received was that, let me see, because I wrote this down. We have gotten tons of calls on the letters that we have sent out. Please bear with us and we will get to you. So I called a second time because I thought, I don't think I heard that right. And I did hear that right. Currently, we are getting a ton of calls regarding the letters that we sent out to everybody. Please bear with us and we will get back to you. So I did. I left my number, and I, with everyone else, am awaiting the same phone call. So I'm not going to lie. I mean, I do like to see some aggressive action with some of these things that we've probably all complained about from time to time. But if it's not done the right way, and if it's not done in good faith, I think this created a lot of fear and anger with our residents, including me, to be quite frank. I am concerned about elderly people who received this. I got 2 calls today from people. One was a 77-year-old man who was so afraid he was going to lose his house. He was going down to City Hall today. I did not hear back from him, but I can tell you he had tears in his eyes. And I heard of, but did not speak to, someone else who received 16 of these and really could not even figure out why, how, or any relationship. So I'm also concerned about the cost, because from what I understand, I am not obviously the only one that received this, and it was sent certified mail, which I believe, I could be wrong on this, is about $6.80 per letter. I talked to some neighborhood leaders as well, because again, I wanted to make sure I wasn't overreacting when I received mine over the weekend. And the neighborhood leaders as well had indicated to me that they had had quite a busy weekend receiving complaints on these. One other man told me, and this was a little bit alarming, that he called and he gave them his number, his address, and they said, "Oh, no, you're fine, there's no problem." He said, "That's great, would you just send me a letter to confirm it?" And they said, "We don't send letters," and hung up on him. So this is not really the customer service that I expect or want, and it really makes me feel much better, quite frankly, even in light of Mr. Hinton's comments, that we did go ahead with that full review of the licensing and inspection department, because I do think that changes need to be made. And it's quite ironic to me, to be quite honest and candid with everyone, that they can send out this letter to me in a house that I've lived in for 25 years. And, you know, I wish someone would pay me rent, but they don't. I have adult kids, so I still let live there for free. When one door away from me is a dilapidated, falling down structure that my neighbors and I have consistently complained about. It is a health hazard, it is a safety hazard, and nothing has been done to that, but they can send out this letter to me, so I'm concerned about the priorities. The letter also says magisterial action will be taken against people. That's concerning to me as well. Why? Anytime you file a magistrate complaint, there is a cost associated with it. Is the city going to file these actions against people? You're going to have, number one, the cost associated with it. Number two, are they going to go and send employees to these, which we're going to have the employees' time out of the office and at magisterial actions, or are we going to hire a lawyer and then we're going to have lawyers' costs? And with all due respect, having practiced law for 29 years, if Mary Dempsey is the magistrate sitting up there and a person comes in and says under oath that they are not accepting rent and they have lived in that property, I'm going to dismiss it. So then we're going to have the postage fee, the filing fee, potentially an attorney fee, and potentially an employee's time out of the office fee cost. So I plan on fixing this by going into my office tomorrow and creating 4 notarized statements from me and my 3 adult children that I have lived in this house for 25 years, that I do not receive or expect rent. That having been said, I am concerned, as I always am, about our most vulnerable residents, the disabled, the elderly, those who are economically disadvantaged, and those who may not have access to transportation. They will not be able to get to City Hall. They will not be able to know what to do. So instead of complaining, I also wanted to think of what I thought was a reasonable solution. And I thought the way this could have easily been rectified was if an affidavit of ownership was placed in the envelope. And then I could have filled it out as the owner, Mary Dempsey. I could have attested to the fact that I do not receive rent and that I reside there myself. And then all you would ask them to do is go get it notarized. And then when the licensing and inspection department receives it back, it would also be subject to the penalties of perjury under Pennsylvania law. They would put it in your file and the issue would be solved. That having been said, I do have a motion tonight on this matter because I would like to at least get to the bottom of this somewhere. My motion is to do a letter to Mr. Oleski, the acting director. I would like to know, number one, who authored this letter. Number two, who authorized this letter. Number three, the number of residents this letter was sent to, and if possible, I would like the list of all people it was sent to. I would like just a listing of all the city records that the LIPS department relied on sending out these letters. In other words, what evidentiary basis did they have to send these to the homeowners in question? I'd like to know what was the cost of the total postage bill sent with these letters, And I would like to know, just as importantly, what is the plan of action for the people who wrongfully received these letters? And I would like an answer to these questions by Monday, December 30th, as I will only be attending one more meeting on January 6th. So that is my motion at this time, gentlemen.
There's been a motion made on the floor by Attorney Dempsey. It's been seconded by Councilman Donahue. On the question? On the question, I agree with Attorney Dempsey's motion. I too have received several calls from people who have received these letters. And I do agree with Attorney Dempsey that we need to receive a response in writing. This is just, it's unacceptable. To say that it's unbelievable is just not accurate. I could believe that this could happen again. This happened a few years ago. At this point, though, I cannot imagine that you would send a letter of that magnitude out without making sure the list was correct. Are there going to be some inaccuracies and maybe some errors? Sure. But to send this out and then, from what I understand, people are calling the Licensing and Inspections Department and they're being told, well, there's really nothing we can do at this time. It's just unacceptable. As Attorney Dempsey noted, there is many senior citizens who probably received this letter. Maybe some of them will just go and pay it because they don't really know what it is. To send a letter like this out, just a mass letter, is simply unacceptable. If this letter were sent out to people who actually owed for a number of years, I could understand it. Again, I don't understand the thought process behind it, and I agree with the motion, and I would hope that we would receive answers as soon as possible. Anyone else on the question? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion is approved.
Thank you. And I just have one final comment for tonight. This got put aside a little bit because of the audit and because of the budget, but on November 6th, 2019, the mayor sent the late Miss Novembrino, our controller, a letter which had to do with Chief DeSarno's self-audit. And without getting into the details of the whole letter, because quite frankly, it's not relevant, the last paragraph said the following: I would defer to your office if you would prefer to have the auditor to be hired for the full gas card usage audit review this information as well. So in caucus, I brought up the following, that I do think that is proper. We have been provided copies of what Chief DeSarno put together, and quite frankly, it's difficult to interpret. It really is. So I think it should be done by someone who is an expert in this field. So I would like to make a motion at this time that Chief DeSarno's self-audit be sent on to Mr. Moretti, our accountant who was hired for the gas card audit, for him to review the same and to provide his recommendation regarding the self-audit and whether it is in fact satisfactory or not, and if so, how it should be rectified.
There's been a motion made on the floor by Attorney Dempsey. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor, or on the question rather? Anyone on the question?
No.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion passes.
That's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. I just have a few things. First, bless you. Mrs. Reed, if we can contact, and I believe this was agreed to when Barry Ice at the company who's going to do the assessment of the Licensing and Inspections Department was here, but can we please contact Barry Ice and ask them to provide regular updates and progress to council on their assessment of the Licensing and Inspections Office? I think that this is very, very important for council to receive periodic updates. I prefer to do it if it's not in writing. Actually, I'd like it in writing, and I'd also like them to come before council if they could do that. Moving forward, and I've asked for this before, these periodic updates and periodic appearances by people who are contracted and work for the city to find out exactly what they've been doing is important. And I was shocked tonight. I was actually shocked when we had the audit firm, Kohansky and Company, in for a caucus prior to the meeting to find out why we have not received the 2019 audit yet, or the 2018 audit, rather. They provided a list to us, timeline of the audit proposal. It's 3 pages. I'm not going to go through everything, but I want to point out a few things that stuck out to me. May 20th, or May 6th, 2019, the audit contract was signed by this council. May 20th, 2019, Kohansky and Company and their staff were on site at City Hall to start the audit. Preliminary meeting and planning discussion with city officials. No financial information available. Told by a member of the Business Administration Office that Rainey & Rainey, who's the audit prep firm, had not started year-end work. That's May 20th, and no year-end work had been started yet. June 10th, 2019, received pension fund trial balance from Rainey & Rainey. Contained obvious errors, returned for corrections. We had asked the firm, what the obvious errors were, and they went through them, and they basically stated to us that these were things that should have been caught. There's no way that it should have made it onto their desk. June 14th, 2019. Kelly Lindy from Kohansky responded to a city official's email indicating that we would meet the deadline as long as we had trial balances by Monday, July 15th. No information received by that date. There's a pattern here. I'm going to go through a couple more. There's a pattern here that the auditing firm went to receive information and they couldn't get it. July 10th, 2019, excuse me. Financial information needed to audit the general fund, special cities, OECD, capital assets, and compensated absences is not available. Kohansky and Company leaves the city. October 31st, 2019. Kohansky and Company received the schedule of expenditures of federal awards from Rainey & Rainey. Received it, excuse me, 1 month after the due date for filing with the Federal Audit Clearinghouse. I think that's what Ms. Houdini was referring to. The gentleman from Kohansky Company explained that if you miss the deadline, you can lose federal funding. The city could lose federal funding. I think one of the follow-up questions is, have we received anything from the Federal Audit Clearinghouse, and are those funds in danger? We don't know that. November 1st, Kohansky and Company contacted Rainey & Rainey regarding the amounts on the schedule of expenditures of federal awards related to OECD expenditures. Kohansky and Company also inquired why one program was excluded from that report. As of December 16th, 2019, Kohansky and Company has not received a response. November 18th, they received revised OECD trial balance from Rainey & Rainey. Additional errors were noted. I could go through this whole thing. I would like this, Mrs. Reed, to be placed in third order when we have our first meeting in January, because I think the public should see this list. It was, to say the least, just unacceptable. I would like to make a motion at this time that this council ask for a meeting as soon as possible with the business administrator and with Rainey & Rainey.
Second.
On the question, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion passes. We asked continually over the last few years, why wasn't the audit in on time? Why wasn't the audit in on time? We received, it will be next month. We'll get a draft audit. There's definitely an issue here. I don't know exactly what it is, but I think from what they said, it has to do with Rainey & Rainey. So I think we need to figure out exactly what's going on, because when you put an RFP out to have an audit done and you continually are late with it, it just is unacceptable. As was mentioned here, the gentleman from Kohansky said he's not even sure how you can make decisions based on the budget that we voted on without an audit. It just is unbelievable and unacceptable that we continually, year after year, do not have the audit on time. So I cannot wait to hear what the answers are from the administration and from Rainey & Rainey. The second thing that I'd like to mention is about the residents from 3rd Avenue who came regarding the truck traffic. I've talked to Mrs. Reed about this. I've talked to Mr. Poshis, the city engineer, in length about it. We are going to put something in writing to Mr. Poshis so that he can respond to us in writing, come up with a game plan for the situation that we find ourselves in there. Basically, without going into great detail, there are trucks, because the Elm Street Bridge is closed, the trucks are now rerouted from the salt plant where Danny Sansky's garage used to be on Elm Street, and they're now being rerouted through 3rd Avenue. So this is causing major issues with noise, major issues with the destruction of some of the sidewalks and the roads, among a number of other things. So I have been in touch with one of the neighbors down there and one of the business owners and neighborhood leaders, Mr. Chomko. So we will get that letter out to Mr. Pocius, and I will update those neighbors as it progresses. As for the breaking news, I guess, on the city losing the Act 511 case, I also can't really comment on it because I just heard it as I was coming in tonight. Wasn't able to confirm, although I know my colleagues had heard it as well. So I haven't read the opinion yet, although I think it's obvious that would be devastating to the city. But until I actually read it, I can't really comment any further. Miss Schumacher, rather, talked about the conversion of the business privilege to the mercantile tax. We do have a copy, and it was on our agenda a few weeks ago, the memo from the Pennsylvania Economy League that detailed all the steps that are involved in that. And Councilman Donahue was correct that we do need to go before the courts and to get it approved. And then I think sometime in July is when that process will start to take shape. What the school district is doing at this point, I'm really not sure, but the Pennsylvania Economy League did lay out all the different options. The only other thing I wanted to mention, as I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, this will be our last meeting for 2019. The meetings for December 23rd and 30th will be canceled. We're going to pass the legislation in seventh order tonight, so there'll be no reason for us to meet moving forward. The next meeting of council will be held the first Monday in January 6th at 10 a.m., and the reorganization meeting will follow at 11 a.m. Tomorrow, again, I just want to announce we are having a public caucus December 17th at 6:30 p.m. in the city clerk's office for the purpose of discussing reorganization, committee assignments, that sort of stuff for 2020. And an executive session will be held either before or after this meeting to discuss personnel matters, specifically the city clerk and the council solicitor. I would just like to thank, and I know we'll thank Attorney Dempsey and the other members of council who are leaving during the Sinai Die meeting January 6th, but I do want to take a moment and thank Attorney Dempsey for all the work that she's done. It has been, she was only appointed, I think, for 5 or 6 months. It could have been easy for her to just mail it in and, just go through the motions. I have never, in 6 years on council, seen anybody work as hard and be as committed to the city as Attorney Dempsey. So I want to personally thank her for all of her hard work and her dedication, and it's been really outstanding. I think we had a really good team, and Attorney Dempsey added a lot of value to being a member of council, so I want to thank her for that. And I want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas, and with that, we'll wrap it up for tonight. Mrs. Reed, you can proceed. Thank you.
5B, no business at this time. 6th order, 6A, no business at this time. 7th order, 7A, for consideration by the Committee on Finance for adoption, file of the Council Number 80, 2019, amending file of the Council Number 6, 1976, entitled, an ordinance as amended imposing a tax for general revenue purposes on the transfer of real property situate within the city of Scranton, prescribing and regulating the method of evidencing the payment of such tax, conferring powers and imposing the duties upon certain persons and providing penalties by imposing the rate of the realty transfer tax at 2 2/10% for calendar year 2020, and the same shall remain in full force and effect annually thereafter.
What is the recommendation of the chairperson for the Committee on Finance?
As chairperson for the Committee on Finance, I recommend final passage of item 7A.
Second.
On the question, roll call, please.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
Attorney Dempsey?
Yes.
Mr. Gahn?
Yes, I hereby declare item 7A legally and lawfully adopted.
7B, for consideration by the Committee on Finance for adoption, file of the Council Number 81, 2019, amending file of the Council Number 11, 1976, entitled, an ordinance as amended, enacting, imposing a tax for general revenue purposes in the amount of 2% on earned income and net profits on persons, individuals, associations, and businesses who are residents of the City of Scranton or non-residents of the City of Scranton for work done, services performed, or business conducted within the City of Scranton, requiring the filing of returns by taxpayers subject to the tax, requiring employers to collect the tax at source, providing for the administration, collection, and enforcement of the said tax, and imposing penalties for the violations by reenacting the imposition of the wage tax at 2 4/10% on earned income for residents and 1% on earned income for non-residents of the City of Scranton for work done, services performed, or business conducted within the City of Scranton for the year 2020, and the same shall remain in full force and effect annually thereafter.
What is the recommendation of the chairperson for the Committee on Finance?
As chairperson for the Committee on Finance, I recommend final passage of item 7B.
Second.
On the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
Attorney Dempsey?
Yes.
Mr. Gahn?
Yes. I hereby declare item 7B legally and lawfully adopted.
7C for consideration by the Committee on Finance for adoption, file of the Council Number 82, 2019, amending file of the Council Number 43, 2018, and ordinance amending file of the Council Number 100, 1976, entitled, an ordinance as amended levying general and special taxes for the fiscal year 1977 by setting the millage for the year 2020, and the same shall remain in full force and effect annually thereafter by amending Section 1, reverting back to the millage rates from 2016, which are .232521 mills levy on land and .050564 mills levy on all buildings, and by eliminating the dedicated millage for debt service contained in Section 2 and replacing the dedicated millage for debt service with a dedicated debt percentage of 33% of real estate tax revenues collected on a current year basis.
I would like to make a motion to table item 7C.
Second.
There is a motion on the floor and a second to table item 7C. On the question? Yes, on the question, just to explain why we're tabling this. Last week, as has been noted, Council made the decision to raise taxes 7 mills on land. This is the tax-enabling legislation. We are going to table this for 2 reasons. Number one, we're not exactly sure if the mayor is going to veto the budget. So if we were to pass this tonight and the mayor vetoed the budget, we'd have to go back and entertain this again, which wouldn't make sense. So that's number one. Number two, there's a question about whether we have to run a special ad for 3 weeks with this legislation. So what the plan is, we're going to introduce this our first meeting back in January. It'll be on the agenda for 3 weeks. It will be amended to recognize the 7 mil increase, and then it will be retroactive to January 1st. And Mrs. Reed and I have discussed sending correspondence to Mr. Fox, the tax collector, just notifying him that we're going to make that change and that there will be a 7 mil increase on land, granted that the mayor does not veto the budget. Anyone else on the question? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved.
7D for consideration by the Committee on Finance for adoption, file of the Council Number 83, 2019, amending file of the Council Number 147, 1986, entitled, an ordinance providing for the general revenue by imposing a tax at the rate of 2 mills upon the privilege of operating or conducting business in the City of Scranton as measured by the gross receipts therefrom, requiring registration and payment of the tax as condition to the conducting of such business, providing for the levy and collection of such tax, prescribing such requirements for returns and records, conferring powers and duties upon the tax collector, and imposing penalties by imposing the business privilege tax at the rate of 1 mil for calendar year 2020, and the same shall remain in full force and effect annually thereafter.
What is the recommendation of the chairperson for the Committee on Finance?
As chairperson for the Committee on Finance, I recommend final passage of item 7D.
Second.
On the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
Attorney Dempsey?
Yes.
Mr. Gahn?
Yes, I hereby declare item 7D legally and lawfully adopted.
7E for consideration by the Committee on Finance for adoption, file of the Council Number 84, 2019, amending file of the Council Number 148, 1986, entitled, an ordinance amending file of the Council Number 98, 1976, as amended, imposing a mercantile license tax of 2 mills for the year 1987 and annually thereafter upon persons engaging in certain occupations and businesses therein, providing for its levy and collection, and for the issuance of mercantile licenses, conferring and imposing powers and duties upon the tax collector of the city of Scranton, and imposing penalties effective January 1, 1987, by imposing the mercantile license tax at 1 mill for calendar year 2020, and the same shall remain in full force and effect annually thereafter.
What is the recommendation of the chairperson for the Committee on Finance?
As chairperson for the Committee on Finance, I recommend final passage of item 7E.
Second.
On the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
Attorney Dempsey?
Yes.
Mr. Gahn?
Yes, I hereby declare item 7E legally and lawfully adopted.
7F for consideration by the Committee on Rules for adoption, file of the Council Number 85, 2019, approving the transfer of a restaurant liquor license owned by KGC Incorporated, doing business as J.J. Bridges, currently in safekeeping with the Pennsylvania Liquor Control Board, formerly used at 925 Northern Boulevard, South Abington Township, Pennsylvania 18411, for use at 100 North Main Avenue, Scranton, Lackawanna County, Pennsylvania 18504, as required by the Pennsylvania Liquor Control Board.
As temporary chairperson for the Committee on Rules, I recommend final passage of item 7F.
Second.
On the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
Attorney Dempsey?
Yes.
Mr. Gahn?
Yes, I hereby declare item 7F legally and lawfully adopted.
7G for consideration by the Committee on Community Development for adoption, Resolution Number 197, 2019, authorizing the mayor and other appropriate city officials for the city of Scranton to execute and enter into an agreement with NeighborWorks of Northeastern Pennsylvania, 1510 North Main Avenue, Scranton, Pennsylvania 18508, to create, establish, and administer the city of Scranton's homebuyer program.
What is the recommendation of the chairperson for the Committee on Community Development?
As chairperson for the Committee on Community Development, I recommend final passage of item 7G.
Second.
On the question? Yes, on the question. First, I want to thank the director of OECD, Mary Pat Ward. I had several questions about this legislation. I was kind of going back and forth on it until she actually came to at the tail end of the meeting last week, and I had a conversation with her outside of chambers. And this afternoon, I posed several questions to her in an email, which she immediately responded to. The responses are a little lengthy. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I just want to explain two things. First of all, the way this will work is NeighborWorks will get reimbursed up to 10% for each project. So if, for example, NeighborWorks expends $300,000 on the homebuyer program, they're subject to reimbursement of up to $30,000. One of the questions that I had was, why would we farm this out? That was my initial concern. Why wouldn't we just have OECD's own staff run the whole program? And she made a good point last week, and then in the email today. She went to a conference regarding all grantees through OECD in Philadelphia, and one of the things on the agenda was the Home Investment Partnership Program. And she explained that regarding the home program in municipalities, especially larger cities throughout the state, their staffs have shrunk over time, and they don't do the direct service work and the compliance at the same time. And she states here, the question is, how do you self-audit for compliance in an ethical way? So the third-party programs can provide the certified training required, time, funding, and an opportunity for expanded training and education, receive more technical assistance, and has the ability to use technological platforms that the city doesn't currently employ to sell the program. My last question to her was, our role be then? What would the OECD's office's role be since we're farming the program out? And I thought this was an important point that she made. She says our role in the homebuyer program remains key. OECD are the conduits for the money. They apply to HUD each year for allocation. They're the ones required to input the data collected for each applicant, and as stated above, they're required to complete compliance on the program, including reporting, determination of its successfulness, and ethical duties such as conflict of interest. There is no homebuyer program without the city's buy-in. This is a 3-year contract. After talking with her, I don't see a reason why we shouldn't do this. I think it does make sense, and I think after 3 years, obviously, we'll reevaluate it and see how successful or unsuccessful it's been, and then we'll go from there. So I'll be voting yes. Anyone else on the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
Attorney Dempsey?
Yes.
Mr. Gahn?
Yes. I hereby declare item 7G legally and lawfully adopted.
7H for consideration by the Committee on Rules for Adoption, Resolution Number 198, 2019, reappointment of Michael Muller, 830 Taylor Avenue, Scranton, Pennsylvania, 18510, as a member of the Historical Architecture Review Board. Michael Muller's term on the Historical Architecture Review Board expired on October 11, 2016, and was held over until November 20, 2019. His new term will expire on October 11, 2021.
As temporary chairperson for the Committee on Rules, I recommend final passage of item 7H.
Second.
On the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
Attorney Dempsey?
Yes.
Mr. Gahn?
Yes. I hereby declare item 7H legally and lawfully adopted.
7I for consideration by the Committee on Rules for Adoption, Resolution Number 199, 2019, appointment of Thomas Tanzitz, 17 Terrace Drive, Scranton, Pennsylvania, 18505, as a member of the Scranton Parking Authority, effective October 1, 2019. Thomas Tanzitz will replace Joseph Wexler, who resigned effective February 5, 2019. Thomas Tanzitz will fulfill the unexpired term of Joseph Wexler, whose term is scheduled to expire on June 1, 2020.
As temporary chairperson for the Committee on Rules, I recommend final passage of item 7I.
Second.
On the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
Attorney Dempsey?
Yes.
Mr. Gahn?
Yes. I hereby declare item 7I legally and lawfully adopted.
7J for consideration by the Committee on Rules for Adoption, Resolution Number 200, 2019, appointment of Norma Jeffries, 619 Colfax Avenue, Scranton, Pennsylvania, 18510, as a member of the Shade Tree Commission, effective October 11, 2019. Norma Jeffries is replacing Ann McNally, whose term expired on October 29, 2017. Norma Jeffries is appointed to a 5-year term, which will expire on October 11, 2024.
As temporary chairperson for the Committee on Rules, I recommend final passage of item 7J.
Second.
On the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
Attorney Dempsey?
Yes.
Mr. Gahn?
Yes, I hereby declare item 7J legally and lawfully adopted.
7K for consideration by the Committee on Rules for Adoption, Resolution Number 201, 2019, reappointment of William Lesniak, 314 Pittston Avenue, Scranton, Pennsylvania, 18505, as a member of the Historical Architecture Review Board. William Lesniak's term on the Historical Architecture Review Board expired on October 11, 2017, and was held over until November 15, 2019. His new term will expire on October 11, 2022.
As temporary chairperson for the Committee on Rules, I recommend final passage of item 7K.
Second.
On the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
Attorney Dempsey?
Yes.
Mr. Gahn?
Yes, I hereby declare item 7K legally and lawfully adopted.
7L for consideration by the Committee on Rules for Adoption, Resolution Number 202, 2019, appointment of John R. Finnerty, 622 Wintermantle Avenue, Scranton, Pennsylvania, 18505, as a member of the Planning Commission of the City of Scranton, effective December 31, 2019. John R. Finnerty will be replacing Pastor Anthony Ishmael, whose term is set to expire on December 31, 2019, and will not be reappointed, creating a vacancy on the commission. Mr. Finnerty's term will expire on December 31, 2023.
As temporary chairperson for the Committee on Rules, I recommend final passage of item 7L.
Second.
On the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
Attorney Dempsey?
Yes.
Mr. Gahn?
Yes, I hereby declare item 7L legally and lawfully adopted. Before we adjourn, I thanked Councilwoman Dempsey, Attorney Dempsey earlier. I want to thank first our city clerk, Lori Reed, as we adjourn now for the year and we don't come back until January 6th. I want to thank our clerk, Lori Reed, for all of the work that she has done this year. This has been a very trying and busy year, to say the least, and she does an absolutely fantastic job. I think it's safe to say that there's very few people in this building and in city government that are more respected than her. She really is the sixth council person. You know, it's not just a job where you come in and you file paperwork. She goes to meetings and she represents this body every single day. So I do want to thank her, and I want to thank the two secretaries in our office, Ms. Carrera and Ms. Marciano.
I second that.
If there's no further business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
This meeting's adjourned.
I was ready to run out and get you one if I could figure out.